Well, so I changed my tune maybe like 7 or 8 years ago. Your gut can tell you no. And, I like to use the, dating analogy here. So, a girl goes on a date with a guy and she knows in like 2 seconds whether or not she's interested or not, right? And it doesn't always make any rhyme or reason. There's no necessary sense to it, but there is virtually no changing your mind if you just don't like vibe with somebody, if you just don't like them, you don't like their mustache, whatever it is, right? It doesn't matter. And so that always becomes a challenging relationship. So I'm okay with using your gut to say no. I would challenge you to maybe open your mind or be a little more, less biased around certain things, people have these predispositions to liking candidates for weird reasons or not liking them for weird reasons, but that's something you can develop or grow into.
Hey everyone, welcome to an adjacent to the Don't Be That Guy webinar series. We've added this one. We were able to pin Fletcher down to get him on here, which is super exciting. But as always, comment along. If you're watching this on YouTube, go ahead and like, share, subscribe. If you're here live with us, thank you so much. Make sure to ask questions. I think we can all ramble and be awesome and excited about this topic for 2-3 hours, but it's way more fun if you have questions. Tell us where we're wrong. Tell us where we missed the mark. Tell us if you agree with something. So with that said, I'd like to, just give an acknowledgement to Ben's with us. Ben's a consultant here at Bering McKinley. Does a lot of great consulting with salespeople, sales managers. Make sure to look him up or give us a call if you need any thoughts on that or if you need any help with that. And then, of course, our absolutely esteemed guest, Fletcher from Discovered. Fletcher, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, esteemed is probably too good of a word, but I appreciate having you on here today, guys.
For sure, for sure. And you'll have to forgive me, Fletcher, if I call you Fletch or Fletchy. My son's name is Fletcher, and I might slip into that. No disrespect, of course, and just love. So, Fletcher, tell us a little bit about just what you're seeing out there. Obviously, well, actually, give us an intro of who you are, and then let's dive in.
Yeah, well, I'm addicted to solving the problem about hiring and getting the right people on the bus. I've literally thought about it since I was 16. And I've worked with over 2,000 organizations over the last 12 years, helping them implement better hiring practices and reducing turnover and hiring more A players. So I literally talk about this subject in my sleep. You can ask my wife. So that's the short version. You can buy me a beer and I'll tell you more about, why I became so addicted.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I love that you're addicted to it. I love that you're into it. I go through these periods where I think I'm really good at it, what I'm about to say, you've heard a million people say it. I feel like I have a great gut for hiring. I can sense if this is the right person. How much BS is that, and how much is that actually valid?
Well, so I changed my tune maybe like 7 or 8 years ago. Your gut can tell you no. And, I like to use the, dating analogy here. So, a girl goes on a date with a guy and she knows in like 2 seconds whether or not she's interested or not, right? And it doesn't always make any rhyme or reason. There's no necessary sense to it, but there is virtually no changing your mind if you just don't like vibe with somebody, if you just don't like them, you don't like their mustache, whatever it is, right? It doesn't matter. And so that always becomes a challenging relationship. So I'm okay with using your gut to say no. I would challenge you to maybe open your mind or be a little more, less biased around certain things, people have these predispositions to liking candidates for weird reasons or not liking them for weird reasons, but that's something you can develop or, grow into. But the real problem is falling in love with somebody and not doing your due diligence. So not gut checking the one that you're like, I got to marry that person, right? And just taking them to Vegas and showing up at the altar. Like we do that in hiring way too much, right? You see a resume and like, you haven't even met the person you're like, you want to hire, right?
See it all the time.
Yeah, no doubt. And I love that. That makes I've never thought about that your gut tells you no. The challenge comes when you let your gut tell you yes.
Yeah.
That makes sense. All right. So one of the things that I've done a lot in the past, and I learned this from my mentor, is that first interview, making it intentionally short because you're gonna fall in love. And you've got to put that throttle on yourself to say, I'm not going to spend so much time with this person that I trick myself into loving them. Is that a thing? This is from a 70-year-old man at the time, by the way. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I think there's some merit in that, but I mean, we tend to be more of assessment forward type. So, we're either, so first off, we love like screener questions, and that's a whole thing. And we maybe talk about that a little bit later, but they have to be really well crafted. So these are questions that people are answering at the point when they hit easy apply on Indeed or LinkedIn or wherever they're seeing your ad. And then the second piece is other additional assessments as appropriate for the role. So really, really hard to fill positions. I'm taking the exact opposite, Josh. I mean, I want to get them into a conversation. I want this to be a meaningful, loving, really engaging conversation. So these would be your like really select specific roles where there's not that many people that have the skill set that you're looking for. Now, the beauty in MSP is most roles that you're hiring for, there's a decent population of people that have the qualified experience. So I really go to assessment first.
Mm.
So, hey, they apply, smart screener questions, and then some really telling assessment, whether that's a attitude and integrity. That's my go-to. I just want people who are just going to be good team players. That's my entry ticket to just being part of my world. Period. Right. I just don't want people that are liars. I don't want people who can't take personal responsibility or negative Nancy's. I don't want any of that. I don't want any part of that in my world. So if they can't get past that, then I don't care what it says on their resume. I don't want you part of it. I don't need a talented terror. Right.
Okay, so that's interesting. The your assessment forward.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times I can speak for myself and maybe some experience with clients. We're usually saving those assessments till the very last minute to kind of say, well, it costs $100. I mean, I don't want to spend $100 on each one of these candidates. Am I miss? We're clearly missing the mark.
Yeah, think about this. So, how many times, I don't different assessments are different things. So, like when you talk about personality assessments, sorry, throw those out the window, guys. So, stop using those in your hiring process. Or, I mean, if you're using it really just as like it's nice to know kind of stuff. It's not all that helpful. It's hard, and it's really hard to make decisions, really meaningful decisions off of some predictive index or DISC assessment or Myers-Briggs. That's not really very helpful, frankly.
Hmm.
But the problem is you get to the end of the hiring process. So you've run job ads, you've collected maybe hundreds of applicants or just lots of applicants. You spent a lot of time screening those. You've done a bunch of first interviews, 3, 4, 5. You've now brought these people in for in-depth interviews. You've spent an hour, 2 hours with them. Hopefully you've done a working interview, spent maybe half a day with them. And then you start to say, okay, I'd like to make you an offer, but I'd like you to complete this assessment or this set of assessments. And then the person bombs them.
Hmm.
What do you do now?
Still go forward because I'm a weak person.
Yeah, you're like you're 4, 6,
Committed
8,
to it at that point.
12 weeks into the process, because I mean you've had a lot of false starts. You couldn't find the right person. It's been a long time just even getting somebody you even wanted to get to that point. You might even be 6 months down the road before you even said, hey, I wanted to make a hiring decision. And now you're faced with this decision that the assessment says don't hire him, but the only reason why you gave him the assessment is because you wanted to hire him when you do it that far down the process.
Right.
So you're going to just like question it. You're going to ignore its results. You're not going to listen to what it has to say. You're going to just be tormented with this decision. And you're not going to have the balls to just say, you know what, it's probably right. Statistically, these things are built to move the needle and be more right than you and your gut. And you're just gonna ignore it. And then you're gonna hire the person. And then 6 months later, you're gonna be like, oh my God, why did I do that?
So you talk about these integrity and honesty tests. I a million years ago as a kid, and I was trying to get a job at a bowling alley, for God's sake. And they gave us this really long test, and it was interesting. Like, basically, would you steal a dollar? Would you take a dollar off the floor? What would you do with it? That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I thought it was really interesting, but I've never ever seen that test since, for 40 years or whatever it was. Is that what an integrity test is? Is that what you've got?
Part of it, yeah, part of it. But I mean, integrity and attitudes are added. The main five components of that for us is number one, are you half glass full person? Are you more of a constructive criticism person, or like hyper critical, just criticize everything for the sake of being critical? And this is so true in the IT space, right? I mean, everybody's met an IT guy that nothing can ever be right. They're so hypercritical. They're very it's the nature of conscientious people. But when you throw a critical kind of vibe in that, it makes it even worse, right? I mean, I want my IT person to be conscientious and to be, questioning, but I don't need them to be nitpicking and hypercritical about everything's wrong, nothing's right, that sort of negative component. And then you've got supportiveness, like, hey, at the end of the day, we have an SLA here. We have the boss just says we need to drive towards this initiative. And I need the team to be supportive of the direction that the customer is taking us, as well as maybe that the boss is taking us. And then most importantly, there are two really, really critical ones is personal responsibility. So, the people who are, it's not my fault. It's always somebody else's. It's the tech's fault. It's the user's fault. It's the boss's fault. It's the traffic. I mean, these people have excuses for everything. And we've all experienced these people in our lives. And I don't know, it just doesn't work for me. Like, I like to try to take extreme ownership of everything that I do. And the buck stops with me at the end of the day. Like, there is nothing that is not outside of my control. So these are the blamers, personal responsibility. And then you get to honesty. And honesty is just absolutely critical. And now you're dealing oftentimes with a lot of sensitive customer information, but it also just plays into these dishonest people do really weird and bizarre things that they're really maddening ultimately. So they'll tell you, they're the yes people who never do what they say they're going to do. They're the ones that, fake things like their time card or their metrics. They're the ones that lie to cover up their mistakes. Sometimes they're blaming. Sometimes the blame and the lie are kind of intertwined into each other. I mean, these people do, they steal, they hide, they redirect, they omit information. They're extraordinarily difficult to deal with because there's always something not right about them. And they're usually doing something terrible behind the scenes.
And that bleeds over into the client experience as well.
Yeah.
That's the first impression from the clients. I'm curious, based on different departments in an MSP, how does the assessment process shift, if at all?
Yeah, mainly. So once from especially on the technical side, I want to at some point introduce some more skill-based type testing. So the behavioral part is really focused on attitude and integrity, not as much personality. So the personality is really the lowest thing down the rung. That integrity attitude is most important. The next most important thing is core aptitude, like people and communication skills. And this is critical in IT because how many times have you called the IT guy over and he just like grunts his way over to your desk and like looks at your computer and like then tells you you're an idiot, like, I'm sorry, I'm not that tech savvy, like apologize. Like that's your job, is to like help me, and be kind of at least, nice and decent communicator about it. The other part's just being critical, strong cognitive ability. And the last piece is applied skill set. So like, yeah, I understand how to use ConnectWise. I've been using it for 10 years. I'm an expert at it, like things like that. So I want to start measuring those things as applicable. I mean, hire an entry level tech. I mean, like you're going to teach them those things. Their attitude, their people and communication skills, and their intelligence are going to allow them to learn.
So in the process, then we're placing a good ad. We're getting those kind of early vetting questions. Am I going to talk to a candidate before I put those types of tests out there, or is that after my first time with them?
Typically after, yeah,
after. Okay,
yeah, typically. So again, hiring is a complex subject, but most cases I want those assessments done before I bother talking to a candidate. And the only exception is if that person that I'm looking for has some specialized skill set that is extraordinarily rare. And then I'm going to start to do that a little bit later in the process, but not at the end, still never at the end.
Never at the end. Okay. So I used to have this thought that, and I don't know how much I really believe this anymore, but of how much is it okay to ask a candidate to do while they're still just a candidate? I feel like, boy, you've got an hour or 2 hours of time investment before you even know if you're considered for the role.
Yeah,
is that a lot to ask of someone who's looking for that position?
it is. But when I got 200 applicants in 2 weeks, like, what are you going to do? So, I mean, let your technology work for you. Now, the other side of that is, ideally you would have somebody in your organization or maybe somebody outside of your organization helping, like when you do identify that candidate does look amazing on paper and you do want them to go through that process, to be really encouraging and to give forward. So this is where you get into recruitment marketing, right? So are you delivering a great message? Are you an employer of choice? Like, are you clearly superior to your competitors? Like, should somebody want to work here versus the guy down the street? Because in an MSP world, like, I don't know, in any given market, you've got a ton of competitors. Like, why work for you? I'm sorry, you got to answer that question. You better answer it well. Now, that might be a moving target. You might be evolving towards that. You might have aspirations to get better. Let's just leverage what we can to say, hey, why am I the employer of choice? Video is amazing for that, right? So, we send our clients a link. They spend 5 minutes answering a few questions on video. They have their team answer questions. How does this job help them personally, professionally, career growth? What do they like about working in this culture? And then we turn those into recruitment marketing videos so that when I do go to the candidate, I say, hey, Josh, I got an hour-long assessment for you to complete. I'm also delivering something to you and say, hey, and here's why. And all the way, by the way, we've hand selected you, Josh, to take this step because we really think you're a high potential candidate. And by the way, once you complete that, then I'm going to ask you to maybe record a couple of answers on video for me. And then I'm going to invite you for a really thorough interview with the hiring manager, not some admin, not some recruiter. Like, the hiring manager is going to spend an hour with you to speak with you. And the last step of, we're going to bring you into the office, and then we're going to have you do a little bit of a working interview, and we're going to speak to your references. And I'm going to just tell you, this is the process up front. And by the way, Josh, I'm going to get you through this process in 5 to 10 business days. And you're going to get an answer from us very, very quickly from step to step on whether or not you get to go to the next step. And then lastly, if I need to, I'll throw a human in there to say, call you and say, hey, Josh, this is where I'll use my admin. Hey, Josh, Fletcher, my boss, really wants to see you go through this process. Will you do that for him? And then, really accelerate that. Ben?
Yeah, so we see it all too often with our clients where they throw out this generic regurgitated one ad or job description. They've got very, very lackluster benefits package and that sort of thing, and then they're frustrated when they can't find good candidates.
Yeah.
From your vantage point, what are some of the key components that companies can add to be appealing to top quality candidates?
Yeah. Sorry, guys, cash is king. So, like, number one, look, I mean, living in the United States in this day and age is really expensive. Even offshore. I mean, we help companies in both. It doesn't matter where you're hiring in the world, but now it's easier to be like, oh, well, instead of saying 2,000, I'll pay them 2,500. Like, no big deal, right? I don't really sweat that. But in the US, obviously, it's extraordinarily expensive to say, well, I wanted to pay 70, but I really need to pay like a 90, 95, right? Like, we start to like get heartburn in those situations. But at the end of the day, if I pay you 95 and you're an A player, that like exponentially increases the revenue of my organization, reduces the number of headaches, the rework, the problems. So my costs of doing business ultimately go down because our efficiency goes up. My culture improves in that scenario. In that scenario, let's say $25,000 a year. I mean, what is that, like, two grand a month, difference? Like, yeah, it's really a drop in the bucket to alleviate all those headaches. Now, the other thing is I pay you 95,000 and say you aren't worth 95,000. You're not that good, right? I got to figure this out in the first 2 to 12 weeks. It's not costing you 95,000 to make that mistake. It's costing you, like in that, so even if it's 12 weeks, it's costing you like $3,000 more. Mm-hmm. So we sort of misconstrue that, as like, wow, that's a lot. Well, it's really a shorter period of time. And we should be making those decisions very quickly in the early part of the relationship, whether or not this person is worth it. And we should also not stop recruiting, because that's the other mistake people make is like, why are we stopping the recruiting process just because I made an offer and I hired somebody? People are risky.
Okay, so let me pick that one up. So I've always had this notion that part of a manager's role is to keep a solid bench of candidates ready, for multitude of reasons, but probably the most obvious one is so you never feel too held hostage by that employee that just is not working for you. Yeah. The common pushback I get, and I think there's some validity to it, is, well, Josh, what do you want me to do? Lie to people, tell them I have a role and I don't? How do you handle that right sweet spot of saying, I want to make sure I'm recruiting, even though I may not have an immediate position, or that I likely just filled the position and I'm hoping that it turns out well?
You just tell them the truth. You just say, look, we have a world-class organization here. We offer great compensation and benefits, or, if I don't have great benefits, I agree great cash compensation, at least. I agree personal and professional growth here. And part of that exercise for us is I want to be close and build and nurture relationships with A players, high performing talent. And Josh, I mean, you and I've met. I really like you. I think you're amazing. I don't want to hold you back from your career aspirations, but I do want to continue to build a relationship with you. And I'd love to find, maybe a quarterly cadence in which that, we're just checking in and continue to get to know each other at a better level, share best practices. We're both in the same space, like we can talk about the latest, greatest AI tool that we're using or whatever. I mean, like, I want to build a relationship with really great people. And, if you're down for that, let's schedule a coffee or a Zoom call, check-in call here in 90 days. Does that sound all right with you?
Yeah, that sounds really well put. I like that. So I think that's a big component. But now let's take it into a little bit of a tougher moment. I had to do a bunch of hiring last year at this time, and it's 2024 at the time. I saw no difference from 2015 to 2009 of like, all right, let me get my great posting up, let me put it on Indeed in a few different places, and then they start pouring in, and there's a lot of junk in there, and sorting through them. It was hours and hours and hours. And because I don't know how to have to do it very often like that, I didn't feel too sorry for myself, but I was like, this is bullshit. Like, this is a nightmare, and calling people and Zoom and all the things.
We'll be right back with more. But first, here's a quick message from Bering McKinley.
Most MSPs are constantly busy, chasing tickets, projects, and fires. But without structure, it's hard to know if the business is really improving. Vision from Bering McKinley is the system that helps you work on your business, not just in it. It connects leadership strategy with daily execution. Vision aligns people, process, and performance, creating clarity and rhythm from goals to results. And the Vision app brings that structure to life, helping you create policies, track goals, review KPIs, and collaborate with your BMK consultant all in one place. Behind it all, Jetson AI, your assistant inside Vision, helps you find answers, generate insights, and take action faster. With Vision, you gain visibility, accountability, and measurable growth. You're not guessing, you're improving. Vision, Jetson, and the Vision app, your path from strategy to results. Start transforming your business today.
All right, let's get back to the conversation.
No matter what, that's a big lift. You guys have a pretty sweet system. Will you tell me a little bit about how, if I would have used your system last year, it would have made my world a little different?
Yeah, I mean, I can show an example of that in the MSP manager role that we're working on right now. If you want, this is kind of
share your screen.
pretty cool. I mean, we got on the call. I was like, this is pretty awesome here. So we started with 204 candidates on the 25th, so the day after Thanksgiving, I guess. And so I don't know, what are we, like 20 days into this thing? And that's the problem, right? Like I got 204 candidates and I need an MSP manager and they got to have MSP experience, right? And it's like, this is just a tidal wave of like headaches to figure out what we got to do. So first off is, tech platform like this is leveraging AI. It's really honing in on what a good resume looks like. And it's helping me also sift out, this is all my candidates here. So I used screener questions and I thought I was pretty clever about it. I think I was. It worked out pretty good. It's like disqualified like 90% of the candidates. The problem in hiring in IT is, right, I want somebody from the MSP world to come work for my company because I need them to have that experience, to know what it's like to deal with multiple stakeholders and SLAs and all those clients. And I mean, it's a little bit different than working as IT inside of Disney. That was my stepfather did that for a long time. And, it's a good job. But it's just different. Right. And so we asked these really clever questions and that allowed us to eliminate candidates who just were like, they definitely were not in the MSP world.
Okay. So do you, not that it's a big burden, but does AI read those and say go, no go, or does a human read those answers and say go, no go?
Neither. It's the AI helps us create those questions because I couldn't create those questions without AI these days. And it's just too much brain power to come up with that clever of a question. But no, it's mechanical, right? So I gave them multiple choice. Hey, do you identify this? Here's the question. Do you this, or that? If they select answers, B, C, and D, they're disqualified. And they select A, they get to move forward to the next step. Then AI determines whether or not they are, we'll move here. This is the short list of people. Then AI says, hey, this person is a 4-star candidate. And that's looking at your job description, garbage in, garbage out, by the way. So we put together a really, really good, well-crafted job description here. And it was able to look at that person's resume and say, yeah, this person's a 4 out of 5. And it defends the score here as well. And then the human looked at it and said, yeah, you know what? I agree. And then they were instantly said, hey, we know you're a great candidate. And this was all automatic because we have the confidence to go to them and say, hey, look, we know you're a great candidate. Complete these assessments. And this is what we talked about earlier. We just said, here, we're going to have you do this. We're going to have you do that. We're going to have you do this. We're going to have you do this. And we told them what to expect. And then, hey, then we're going to move fast. And then we're going to ask you to complete these assessments. And these were, an hour and 15-minute assessments.
So what we're looking at here, would this be considered an applicant tracking system?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it'd be a version of an applicant tracking system, and it's emailing and texting the candidates, reminding them, I know that he saw it. So again, if he doesn't complete this task, then my admin or my recruiter can go and just call him and be like, Ronald, we really want to see you get through this process. That really helps, goes a long way. But all the follow-up and reminders are done automatically. And then he completes the assessments. Now he didn't do so great. We'll probably disqualify this candidate. I can see that in a snapshot, but I can also look at those in a more detailed view if I wanted to. And this covers over 60 different attributes. So that in attitude and integrity stuff, those core competencies. So, oh yeah, go figure. you know, IT guys, poor with people, right? Which I mean, we're not going to tolerate that. I mean, I get IT people aren't known for their bedside manner, but like we're kind of in the business of hopefully being better than that, right?
Yeah.
And he also might be dumb too. So sorry.
Okay.
Hey Fletcher, we're gonna have we got a lot of business
Yeah.
owners, MSP owners that are watching this, as well as candidates looking to break into the MSP space. So, this day and age, what does a good resume look like? Is there a structure that you look for? Any specifics?
Well, the candidates aren't going to love this, but I mean, I look for stability still to this day and age.
Yeah.
I mean, that number one. So, how many times a client has brought me a candidate who tests like this, who's like, we're basically like the tests say, don't hire this guy. And then I say, hey, can you send me the resume? And the guy hasn't kept a job for more than like, a year or two at a time. And so then I just ask one simple question: how long do you want this person to work for you?
Hmm.
And the answer always is, I hope for a long time.
So Fletcher, does the system look at the resume and understand that that's what's happening based on kind of the years that they put in? Is it automatically scoring that? How does that
Yeah,
work?
the AI is looking at it. Yeah. So
Okay.
So let's talk about that stability thing. You're not 30, you're not 100 either, but that's kind of we'd be accused of being boomers with that type of mentality. But you're the expert. Stability is still king. So I think younger people would say, no, I moved to where I need to be. I made a bad decision. I like this place more. They paid me more. Those in your opinion are not the answers that you want to hear from a candidate that you're going to hire.
no, never. So, and there's very few exceptions to that rule. I know in the tech space, we see a lot of movement, but those are the one percenters, right? And we're not dealing with that caliber of worker typically. So no offense. I mean, just we're not spending $100 million to hire machine learning, engineers in our companies, right? And those are different trajectories. So the bigger problem is, you think about this. I mean, I'm a Malcolm Gladwell guy. How long does it take for you to, learn something, to master something? And I mean, you guys are all really smart people. I've known Gary for a long time. Somebody I respect is a really intelligent person, right? But it takes time to like figure things out, like to really get the mastery level of this skill set, that whatever it is that you possess. I mean, I spent I've spent my whole life thinking about hiring. I'm still learning. I'm still getting better, but it took me a long time to get to a place where I really had a phenomenal system and a process, and to get all that down just like perfectly. So if the person is moving around all the time, they're not developing skills. Like, they're not there long enough to get good at anything.
Right.
Fletcher, when we think about hiring someone, I mean, to me, there's like this risk score, right? So, oftentimes we get, a younger person coming in, maybe out of college, they score really well on all these, intangibles, right? They've got a good personality, they want to serve, they've like maybe they've done some volunteer work that, because they're just trying to kind of get going in their life. Um, to me, the risk of hiring them is right what you're saying right there, which is like the experience, right? Like, how can, I know I was like this when I was, 18. I went to go and get hired by an IS department. And I literally never even worked on a computer before, but that's what I was going to school for, and that's what I wanted to do in my life. And I was really excited, and I'm kind of like the same guy that I was back then, where I was just kind of like, I would work my butt off. But the guy looked at me, he's like, nothing. I'm like, yeah, that's why I'm here. Like, this is what I need you to, hire me for that. Like, how do we think about that when we find the right person, they're just not ready for the role? Is there like a de-risking, we could pay them less? Or is the market really saying, no, you got to pay people X amount, or they're just going to go find some other guy that's just going to pay them because they're looking more at market signals of how much they need to pay for the position versus the person? How do we think about that? And how does the system that you developed help us with that decision?
Well, first of all, I would love to hire a young Gary into my organization. You probably were a rock star, even though, you showed up on day one and you didn't know anything because you probably worked your tail off. You're a smart guy. You actually have great, bedside manner, people skills. I mean, like, you have all those intangibles that so many other people don't. So that is, like, to me, the fundamental thing that many people unfortunately are missing. And that's why they're job hopping, by the way, because they're like, people don't like them. They're not actually good employees. They're misbehave. They're problematic behaviors, or they're not, unfortunately, smart enough to do the job. And that's, these things. So, but yeah, you do get a college kid at a discount, period. But there's a market rate for a college kid, unfortunately. And if you don't like that market rate, then you better figure out your business model and change your pricing structure and figure out how to do that. But now, once you get them, so yeah, recent grad, a young, unexperienced person, they're going to come at a discount. Like, that's the nature of that type of person. The trade-off is you're going to have to develop them. You're going to have to give them personal and professional growth. And if you do that with these younger folks, they will stick around for a nice period of time, as long as you continue to challenge them and grow them within their role or their sphere of influence. And growth comes, just new responsibilities, new challenges. And, IT people love to geek out on stuff. So they love a new project, a new technology. So keep pushing their limits, knowing that, you're going to push their limits. They're going to struggle at first, then they're going to master it. And then you got to give them something else to master. And if you keep doing that to a young kid, of course, keep their pay moving up as well. And then also give them space to develop personally. Don't like work them completely to death, right? Let them go have a little bit of fun and spend some time with their friends and family. Then they're probably going to be stick with you for almost forever. And if you're also very transparent about that roadmap, like, hey, here's your career path with us. And those career paths are, you can stay with us forever. You could be the best technician, stay with us forever. You can be a leader, stay with us forever. Or you could stay with us for, 2 years, and I'm going to get you tooled up and ready to go on to something bigger and better. And I'm also okay with that. But let's be transparent and have these conversations about which path you're going down on a regular basis. And I'm going to keep you, moving down those paths. And then we're going to work together accordingly, depending on the path that is right for you.
A follow-up I have on that one is, if from the candidate standpoint, let's say we have Gary, he's a green candidate, doesn't know anything, but very hard worker. He's got great personality, that sort of thing. What are some things that they would do in the resume and the cover letter to be seen to even get their foot in the door?
Yeah.
To get that shot, to say, put me in, coach, just teach me. I'm worth it. Trust me.
Yeah. Well, that's where I love assessment. So when I'm hiring green talent, I'm definitely assessment forward, because how can I figure this out? Right now, from a resume, things I look for in young talent is I want to see a pretty good trajectory. So in high school, I want to see some activity, sports, clubs, extracurriculars. I love Eagle Scouts, cut coat knife salespeople. I mean, I want to see that these kids have been doing something more than just going to school. And then when they get to college, I want to see the same thing. I'm extraordinarily biased against kids who don't work through college. Now that's one of my biases. I worked 30 hours a week. I graduated in 4 years with 2 degrees. I was in a fraternity. I partied my ass off. I mean, like, I had a 3.7 GPA. Okay, I can do it. Why can't you? I had strong work ethic. I've worked since I was 9 years old. But everybody I've met who's like that is a worker. Like, that's in their DNA. Like, these people, they're college athletes. They're involved in their community. They're doing extracurriculars. They're typically working. But that kid who's never had a job comes out of a 4-year degree. I don't care how freaking smart you are. Like, you don't know what it's like. You don't even know what it's like to even show up to work and like have any expectations from a work perspective. So if you are a young person out there, I don't care. Like, if you are going to Stanford, go get some work experience. Go get an internship. Go get work under your belt. Go work at Starbucks. I don't care. Do anything, but get some work experience.
So Fletcher, it sounds like this is very idealistic, right? Like, we want to kind of focus on, the soft skills, especially when they don't have a lot of experience. We want to, look at kind of personality as far as like, are they, fun to be around, all these things that you identified. I think
Communication skills.
a lot of business owners.
I don't care if you're fun to be around. I just care that you're a good communicator.
Okay, so good communication skills. So a lot of business owners, including myself, would probably agree with that. But when we're dealing with a sea of, candidates, 200, 400, 500 candidates, threading that needle, right? Finding that exact person could be difficult. And generally, it's scary to hire someone that has little to no experience over someone that has a lot of experience. So let's say we can get people into the mindset of like, skills come secondary, especially at this kind of entry level. How does the system talk to us in a way where we can kind of understand those attributes over kind of the experience attribute? Like, you talked about the assessments, all that stuff. Are we still compiling all that scoring together, or is the system coming up with a score based on some of these things that you're talking about where we can easily identify them and so they don't get kind of lost in the shuffle of things?
Well, that's where AI has been really phenomenal. It can look at the resume, you can tell it this is what I'm looking for, and it's really good at extracting that and giving you a sort of a systematic score, 1 to 5, how well that I think they're matching. And then assessments, again, they give you a really pinpoint score. It's just, hey, it's good or bad. I kind of know in a glimpse, like when we were looking at that candidate earlier, it's like, yeah, his resume was a good match, but his assessments were bad. I'm done.
Okay, so it's pretty black and white after we get kind of them assessed and stuff.
Like, I mean, I can just make my decisions based on that because I'm dealing with a volume of candidates, in this scenario. So it's super simple. I'm just move on. Let me look for the one that has good star ranking, who passed my screener questions, who is all greens on the assessment. Now, once they're all greens, I'm going to look deeper at that because there's always more to understand when there's 60 plus things that I measured in that case. But I'm like, now you got my attention. Now I spend my time looking at your resume and looking at everything else. And more often than not, I'm inviting you to an interview at that point, and I'm going to have a deeper conversation.
And what do you think? Like, because that sounds amazing. Like, as a hiring manager or as a business owner, it's like, man, that seems like you've taken this very difficult, sometimes scary, sometimes boring thing and turned it into something where you can make really quick decisions based on real data. Like, how much time do you think, like, would you attribute to this time savings of getting to the right people versus like some other system or just some homegrown kind of recruiting process?
I mean, in this pipeline, the guy's interviewing 4 rock stars, in less than 2 weeks, and he's going to make a hiring decision within 3 weeks of starting a search for this position. I mean, think back on your own experiences, guys. Are you making really great hiring decisions in 3 weeks from the moment you go live on your search? I bet you very few of you can say yes to that question.
Well, we tend to say if they overanalyze it, they wait too, they need quantity 1 hire. So now they start thinking about, okay, let me pull this together. They sling a lackluster job description on one of the platforms, and then it's like a last minute type process. Versus this sounds like you've got a nice. It's kind of this process. You set it, and it's constantly churning and looking for candidates so that they don't have to go through that headache.
Yeah, it spits out the very, very best that you can then pay attention to a small number of people that are worth your attention, right, at that point. And the rest I just sort of forget about, right?
Help me protect myself as a hiring manager. And I think Josh and I both share this experience. We get very excited, right?
Yeah.
So we see people come through and, they say something or the resume says something that we just, we think the world of them. And we're probably more excited about the situation than they are. We probably think that there's more to them than what there probably is a lot of times. And how do we deal with that? Maybe the system doesn't necessarily do that better than anything, but like how just like from our personality types of like wanting to like grow the business and get the
Yeah.
right people, how do we like deal with that
Well, yeah,
situation?
a lot of IT people are high on the S and the disc profile, which is usually a pretty like empathetic, like caring type. You're usually pretty high on the C section too. Although, a lot are C Ds, so Ds are a bunch of jerks. So I resemble that remark, so don't worry. um, but there are probably a high proponent of leaders in the MSP space that have this kind of steadiness, which is a high empath type of personality, which means you're generally going to like people and want to give them a chance, and you're caring and patient and all those things, which are great redeeming qualities. I mean, amazing qualities. Why I married my wife. but um, so you're late to the party, Gary. We talked about it earlier, but so let's expand on that. So once, I mean, the assessment, screener questions, AI, all these things are helping me kind of get my bias out of the way. And I'm like getting me to a place where at least where I'm talking to that person, I have a much higher probability that this is really a great person. But let's talk about on the back end of that process. There's really three things that you got to do and we got to get better at doing, right, as leaders. So one is better at interviewing. Now that's tricky, but I can teach. We won't have time for it, but I can teach you, and I teach people kind of best strategies to how to execute structured, evidence-based interviewing techniques. And it takes a little bit of practice. You got to want this. You got to want to lean into these things. But that's a whole subject. We can do that on another webinar we can talk about, but you want to lean into that. Now the tool gives you questions, it gives you structure, gives you candidate scorecards. So it allows you to hopefully check your gut, right? A little bit. We've talked about that. So these are the attributes I'm looking for. I got to score Josh, this candidate that I love because it's got a kid named Fletchy, I'm like, I already like the guy, so check his, I'm gonna score him and try to objectify my feelings, in a more systematic way there. The other one is references from previous direct supervisors. And this is again is a bit of an interview technique, but it's also sort of a mandatory thing that we have to do. And if you think about it from that perspective, like do not hire somebody unless you can speak to their previous supervisors. And you just make this as sort of a sticking point in the process. Tells you a lot. If you have a track record of that past boss won't talk to you, I prefer you not talk to that person. I can't track them down because we didn't have a good enough relationship to be able to do that. They have that he's going to hide behind HR and not let you talk to me. Then I mean that's everything I need to know. That means none of your past bosses liked you enough to go to bat for you to say something nice about you. And it's that absence of positive mentions from people of credibility, not your coworkers, not your mom, somebody who is the chief consumer of your work product, your past boss. If they're not willing to go to bat and say something nice about you, that person is a problem, guys. A huge, gigantic problem. But if I can get 3 out of the 4, 4 out of the 4, to jump on there and say amazing things about you, probably got a really high quality individual with high integrity, high reliability, and probably at least decently competent. So that's a great gut check.
But you talk about gut checks. I've probably said it a dozen times. I've heard it dozens of times. Well, why even bother with the reference check? It's just going to find their favorite people to tell me great things about them. I've always seen that as like, oh, that's a good point. But really, it's like, can you find some great people to say great things about you? That's a flip for me. That's really interesting. So
people of credibility. That's
credibility,
the point.
of course.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it starts in the interview. It starts in the interview. So I don't know. Gary, I mean, I'm going to go out on a limb here. That first IS job, the guy's like, I hired you, nothing, dumb kid, but I'm going to take a risk on you. And glad he did, I'm sure. Or you're glad he did. Was he glad that he did?
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, definitely.
They probably scaled up, bought the company.
There we go. Okay. So what was his name? What was the guy's name, Gary?
Boy, this is 20 something years ago now.
First name, fine.
Pop quiz.
God, I can't even remember at this point. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I mean, this is before the internet. We're
Before the internet.
Yeah, this is 98.
It was a test on honesty. You just made up a name.
When you finally left the organization, did you leave or did you end up buying his company from him?
No, yeah, no, I left
Yeah,
for
okay.
sure. Yeah.
So when you ended up leaving, and if you had gone to Josh as your new former employer here, do you think that guy would have gone to bat for you and said, some nice things about you?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I would have had 7 or 8 people at the company that would have done it. Yeah.
Yeah. So they hired this dumb kid who knew nothing, and they basically told you to your face that there's fat chance you're going to make it here. And you turn around having a bunch of advocates, even though you departed the organization at some point, right?
Definitely. Yeah.
So that's the kind of thing. And that's an interview question. I was just interviewing Gary. Now I'm taking him back 20 years. We probably don't need to go back that far in most cases, but I mean, Gary ran his own company for a long time. So I got to stretch here, but, but that's kind of the story, right? So, and that's an interview question. I just interviewed Gary for this job, right? And now I already got a clue here that there's something right. That confidence, that definitiveness there, that like, oh yeah, like, no hesitation, right? All of that. I'm like, okay, I'm on the right track. But now I'm going to say, okay, Gary, I want to give you, I really enjoyed meeting with you today. Can you go find Ed, that old guy that you worked with, back then, can you go track him down? Can you get him on my calendar? And by the way, here's my scheduling link. I'm going to make it easy for you. You make them call their old bosses, check in on the kids, the dog, the whatever, and have them schedule the reference call for you and them to speak with them. That also speeds the process up, guys. I'm not playing phone tag. Anybody who knows me, you book an appointment with me. Otherwise, I will not call you. I will not chase you down. I will not do endless email tag with you. Like, I just don't have time for that crap, right? They do all the work. They get it all done. You just show up for the call. Now, I did one of these references for somebody I hired recently. I did it on a Saturday at 12 because that guy's a boss and he's busy and he's jamming. He was running 3 companies and he's like, I'm so sorry. I'm so glad. Thank you. He was like apologizing to me. I'm like, dude, thank you for taking time out of your busy day. I know you're a busy guy and I will gladly talk to you at Saturday at 12 for 10 minutes, not a big deal. And I really appreciate it. And by the way, I'll thank you for the candidate too. The candidate really appreciates you to, spending a little bit of time on your Saturday to come talk to us, because we're really interested in Brendan and, so far we like him, but I want to hear what you have to say. I learned a lot about it.
Fletcher, I love everything we've talked about. I've learned a lot. Now let's get into kind of the reality of the world. The clients that are, or the folks that are likely listening to this, are running a $500,000 a year revenue, maybe a $3 million a year revenue. Their worlds look a lot the same. They are busy. They're small business owners. They probably started the company because they're awesome with people and technology, and they've had to kind of fake it till they make it on how to be a salesperson, how to be a bookkeeper, maybe even how to be an accountant, how to be a manager. And they're doing great learning all these things. Now we're saying, oh, great. And here's a nice list of better ways that you can do your recruiting. So now pretend you're a recruiter until you get really good at it. If I had to kind of look and say, thinking of all the small business owners I've ever met, they'll usually get to a 7 out of 10, maybe even a 10 out of 10 on sales. They'll get to a 4 or 5 out of a 10 on accounting. They'll get to 6 or 7 out of 10 out of real managers. What's your prognosis on that small business owner turning into a really good hiring manager / recruiter?
Well, I've been thinking about this since I was 16. There's nothing more important as a leader than, I mean, look, I love Elon Musk, for better or worse, for anybody, contentious guy, but the reason why he's so successful, he's the world's best recruiter.
Yeah. Yeah.
He literally is the world's best recruiter. He's really smart too, but that's his secret sauce. So like, why wouldn't I want to be the world's best recruiter in my little domain, right? Now, the reality is that might take time and energy to get better at. But Gary, you and I were in a mastermind, I don't know, many years ago, I can't even remember. But you and I went to lunch down in Laguna Beach there, and we talked, for like 2 hours. And you did this, man. Like, tell us, like, I want to hear from you what difference it made in your world.
Yeah, no, I think all these kind of tips and tricks that you're talking about, especially the one where you get the guy to call his ex-boss or coworker, it's all true. It all helped the process. You find ways to limit the candidates in a really clear way. I felt like we had the best hiring process, and I figured this out, 10, 11 years into, running the company,
Yeah.
so up until that point, it was like, who do we know that we could find to hire, or let's post a job on, Craigslist or whatever, wherever the
I
candidates would
remember
come
you'd
from.
hired a recruiter and you like regretted it. And I think that's
Yeah.
why we had lunch and you're like, I
Yep.
just wasted a bunch of time and money. And they're like, oh, I'm not doing that
Yep.
again. Right.
Definitely. Yeah. And, all the reasons that person, I might have hired a couple people from them, and all the reasons it didn't work out were, one, we didn't own the process. So
Yeah.
we didn't really understand what was happening, misaligned, kind of incentives, right? So,
Yeah.
all of this stuff, does matter. I mean, as a business owner, it's like, yeah, it's probably the most important thing to get right. Especially as a service company, right? Where the billing people or the service people or the revenue stream. I mean, it's just, you got to get this right.
You're
Um,
literally in the people business.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, and and really the real big thing for me is a crazy busy, business owner that had no time for anything, including trying to find the right people. As crazy as it sounds, which is probably a lot of what the audience feels, is I literally had a mind shift of like, oh, it's just about getting new clients because we'll get the right people. Like, I had full confidence. It was like, we're going to find the right people, and the process that we followed, which is what you're talking about, meant, we were small, so I would officially have like the final say. But by the time they got to my desk, it was already a guarantee. It was just, which one do I want?
Yeah.
It was many people that were great candidates
Yeah.
versus too many wrong candidates. So,
Yeah.
I can definitely attest to the process.
Good problem to have.
So
Yes.
let's stay fair here. So Gary, were you using Fletcher's tool or service?
I was using a modified version of what he had, but it was mainly just the processes and the philosophy around it.
Okay. So with that said, Gary, I barely like you, but I do put you in the 1% club. You are the guy that if you learn it, you're going to make it happen. So I don't want to be too flattering of you, but you are the 1%. I am the 99%. I can listen to this and I can hear it. But the minute I'm staring at my monitor and it's dark outside and it's like, okay, I just learned all these great tips. Okay, I'm going to do it right this way. Fuck that. I'm going to screw it up immediately. I'm going to get lazy. I'm going to get distracted. Where does I can try to fake it. I can try to get there, but how? I love what you guys do on your end as your business, Fletcher, of like, hey, you can either get good at it or hire someone that's already good at it. Are those my options in the world?
We do that all at the same time, right? So that's where we do the fractional talent acquisition. It's $1,500 a month to have a coach, a hiring expert, a team of people who've been doing this for 10 plus years each, right? To go in and coach you through this process. It doesn't mean you do this. They make the decisions for you. This is not your traditional recruiting process. That's what I was talking about, Gary, right? Like you still own this process, but you have somebody who's managing it for you, helping you bring those finalists to the end, and then helping you teach you how to be a better interviewer, how to check references, how to do the human part, how to set up working interviews, how to do the training and onboarding piece. So by the way, hiring doesn't stop for like the next year until after you're done hiring, but it's really intense in those first months of how you train and onboard and assimilate those people. Like, don't drop the ball on that. Like, you can hire a rock star and you be the reason why they don't make it, right? So
yeah, and just
having that resource is really helpful. Or having a team, a coach like Bering, McKinley, you guys there, hey, keep coaching these skill sets, because there is a human component of this. There always will be. You don't pick, we don't have arranged marriages here, in most of the world, right? Like, there's a human component. You got to make some good decisions, and having some coaching and some accountability and somebody who knows what to do and can sniff out the problems is really helpful, right?
Our approach, so I was hands off, right? So I talked with Fletcher, understood the process, understood the philosophy, and then we handed this off to an EA, and she was great, super organized. We had an ATS that helped us manage all the, so we had all the systems in place. We had a person involved. But because we had those systems and the philosophy and process around what we were trying to get accomplished, the net result was the best possible people I had ever seen. And it wasn't like, they were coming from Stanford and like all these, like, they were just the same kind of person with better skills.
Yeah.
Better,
attitude.
better attitudes, better, just everything was better because we weren't getting fatigued or letting me talk to the person for 3 hours and all they're doing is listening to me talk about how great the company was, which is, I don't know if I'm the only one. I think that probably shared with other people, but ultimately it took me out of it, which was great. And then I only had to make a decision, and eventually I didn't make any decisions. I just had everyone else kind of do the hiring, and unless it was a higher up or whatever. But I can definitely attest to the fact
you got to teach those managers too at some point, right? So again,
definitely,
nobody teaches anybody how to do hiring. You don't learn this in college. You don't learn this in business school. And as a manager that you're hiring and developing, hopefully a guy like you, Gary, you're probably teaching them those things. But in most companies, nobody's teaching these frontline mid-level manager, your service manager, like nobody's teaching them how to do this stuff. That's where we come in, right?
And by the time you're actually spending time interacting one-on-one, they've already gone through this gauntlet. So now you've got your bet of, spending that bandwidth on a quality candidate. I like that.
Yeah. Because Gary nailed that too, right? I think the common trap is, as a, hiring manager of any kind at any level, but CEO or service manager, or whatever, I interviewed 4 candidates and they're all just like, oh, kind of like, I don't know, I guess I could do the job, but I couldn't bear spending time interviewing another candidate because I got to get it moving here. I got to fill this job. You feel that pressure. And you're like, well, this is just the way it has to be. And like, that's not the way it has to be. Stop thinking that way.
So Fletcher, as we wind down here, tell us, give us a couple minutes on just what does Discovered do? What is Discovered's role in this whole world?
Yeah, I want to solve hiring for everybody, particularly small and mid-sized businesses. Really my passion here. But we've been partnering with Bering McKinley because we love the MSP space. Old friends like Gary in this world, right? But we teach best recruiting and hiring practices. So that's the consulting, executive education. We don't do what you guys do at Bering McKinley and the whole business side of it, but we sync really well, right? And I do that for free. You go to YouTube, you Google me. I'm blessed with this very odd name. Thank you, Mom. You can, the content is free. You can take me out to lunch, Gary. That cost him lunch and a beer. Happy to talk about all day. But we create recruitment automation software, so the tools that support these best practices to automate so much of that. And I mean, that was the infant stages. Gary and I having lunch, looking over the Pacific coast, and then that, our dream was to build this, and then we built discovered.ai is that recruitment automation software. It's incredibly inexpensive. It's like, starts at like $110 a month to, $400 for most small businesses. And then we do the fractional recruiting where we'll just do a lot of that legwork. But again, it's all three of these things when we work with people. It is our job to teach them how to be better at interviewing and better at hiring, to support them in that, to take off all of the heavy lifting in the front end of that, to give them an expert into that process, so that they can always be recruiting. And when they are actively recruiting, to be making the best hiring decisions and to de-risk it. So at $1,500 a month, you have some of the world's experts at this, just solving the problem, holding your hand through that process and de-risking it. Like, you pay a contingent recruiter 10, 20, 30%. You're paying 15 grand to 40 grand to make a hire. It is so painful when that doesn't work out. And for $1,500 a month, you can hire as many people as you want and staff up and top grade your people, recycle get rid of the bad ones, bring in the good ones. Like, you just turn the thing into a machine and take all of the hard work out of it, right? So that was kind of the vision for me, because I have this allergic reaction to the traditional contingent recruiting and staffing model. Forget staffing companies, Aerotech and those people, like, please shoot me now. Like, the quality of talent that those people bring in are awful. But the direct placement people, unfortunately, are not that much better, and they cost a lot, and it's not worth it. It's not worth it.
Yeah, right on. Well, Fletcher, thank you so much for joining us. Everyone watching this, thanks for spending the time with us this morning. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to like, share, subscribe. Put a comment in there if we missed the mark, if we missed something important to you. We love those comments. We love responding to them. And Fletcher, where can people find you out in the world?
Yeah, I hang out on LinkedIn. So Fletcher Wimbush. You can find us at discovered.ai. So pretty easy there. And again, a simple Google search will bring me up. So again, very blessed to own my own SEO here. But I look forward to anybody who wants to chat. You can bend my ear for free. Again, buy me a beer maybe, or just say something nice to my mom about him.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Thanks, everyone, for joining. Bye.